Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this is just another one of those fake animal videos, like the low-state Bigfoot footage or the Mongolian death worm. But I am here to tell you that the Sand Howler is very real, and if you go looking for it in the desert, you might not make it back. Why? Because it will drive you mad. But first, we gotta start at the beginning. Way back when, there was a civilization called the Nex. They lived in cities made of red sandstone. They were masters of their environment, and nothing could stop them until the day the earth rumbled and the sky rained fire. Their once great cities became buried under sand, hidden from the world forever. Or so we thought, because now and then something stirs in the deserts of the Middle East, something that didn't belong in the afterlife. They call it the Sand Howler, and you won't believe how terrifying it really is. We begin our story in the year 2006. A British explorer by the name of John Henry Burwash was touring the Syrian desert. His grandfather had told him tales of a creature that lurked in the sands, but he assumed they were just stories. That all changed when his tour group visited the ancient ruins of a lost city. According to legend, this was the place where the Sand Howler came from. Apparently, it would emerge during sandstorms and drag unsuspecting victims down into the swirling sand, never to be seen again. Of course, John Henry figured it was just a local legend, and he was even more skeptical when his guide told him that people still went missing in the desert because of it. But John Henry was about to see for himself that the Sand Howler was more than just a myth. While exploring the ruins, John Henry noticed strange tracks in the sand. They looked almost like giant footprints, except they were way too big to belong to any human. He and his group decided to follow the tracks, and soon they found something incredible. Half buried in the sand was a gigantic statue of a snarling lion, and right on top of it stood something else. Something that shouldn't exist. There in the flickering light of the oil lamp he held above his head, John Henry saw the most horrifying thing he'd ever seen in his life. It looked like some kind of skeletal jackal. Its fur, if it ever had any, was completely gone, leaving behind only cracked clay and shifting sand. The creature's ribs and spine were clearly visible through its skinless body, and from between them seemed to flow streams of burning lava. The beast was also missing its eyes, but John Henry could have sworn he saw faint flickers of cursed fire burning within its side. Then it did something that made John Henry drop his oil lamp and run for his life. It let out an unearthly howl that echoed across the empty desert night. As it screamed, visions filled John Henry's mind. He saw entire caravans swallowed up by the dunes, heard the screams of men going mad as they were ripped apart by unseen forces, and felt the cold touch of ghostly fingers dragging him down into the sand. Terrified, he turned and ran back towards his camp, stumbling over the dunes in the darkness. But the howling continued long after he'd left the ruins behind. And even in his sleep, John Henry couldn't escape the sound of the Sand Howler's unearthly cries. When he woke up, his tent was ripped to shreds, and his supplies were scattered around the camp. In terror, he fled into the desert, stumbling around for days until he finally found his way back to civilization. Ever since, he has dedicated his life to warning others about the horrors that lurk in the buried ruins of the next. But if you ask me, I think John Henry's story is just the tip of the iceberg. You see, before modern times, people used to get lost in the desert all the time, and when they did, sometimes they encountered creatures of nightmares that drove them insane. Take, for example, the legend of the Syrian desert man. In the year 1837, a French explorer named Louis Branger encountered a mysterious figure while traveling through the Syrian desert. The man, who appeared to be emaciated and covered in dirt, was reportedly seen dancing and singing in a strange manner. When Langer approached him, the stranger responded by throwing stones and uttering unintelligible words. After disappearing into a sandstorm, the mysterious man was never seen again. Some say he was simply an escaped lunatic, but others believe he was a victim of the curse of the neck. Then there's the story of the German archaeologist Rudolf Cooper, who uncovered an ancient tomb in the middle of the Syrian desert. As he and his team descended into the tomb, they were confronted by a terrible stench and disturbing hieroglyphics depicting a creature that looked a lot like the Sand Howler. Shortly after, Cooper himself disappeared without a trace. Some say he was eaten alive by venomous snakes, while others blamed the wrath of the Sand Howler. And these stories only scratch the surface. There have been countless reports of explorers and adventurers disappearing in the Syrian desert, with many believing they fell victim to the cursed city and its terrifying inhabitants. But no one knows for sure, because every single expedition that ventures into the forbidden zone comes back with a new story that could impossibly be real, or can it? After hearing these stories, I sent my own team into the desert to find the Sand Howler. What they discovered shocked me to my core. See, I've always been fascinated by cryptids. Like Bigfoot, or the Loch Ness Monster. And when I heard about the Sand Howler, I knew I had to investigate. So the first assembled a team of experts, including a zoologist, a historian, and a paranormal investigator. We traveled to the heart of the Syrian desert and set up camp near the ruins of a lost city. We spent days scouring the area for evidence of the Sand Howler, and we weren't disappointed. First, we found strange tracks in the sand that looked like huge footprints. Our zoologist was baffled because they didn't match any animal he'd ever seen before. Then we discovered a series of caves hidden in the cliffs nearby. Inside, we found bizarre rock art depicting the Sand Howler and otherworldly creatures. But our most significant discovery came when we explored the ruins of the ancient city. Hidden among the crumbling walls, we found a statue that looked eerily similar to the one described by John Henry Burroughs. And as we stood there examining the statue, we felt a sudden gust of wind sweep across the ruins. The temperature dropped and the hair on the back of our necks stood on end. Just then, a massive sandstorm erupted outside the city walls, and we knew we were in for a terrifying night. As the wind howled and the sand swirled, we huddled together in the crumbling buildings, trying to stay warm and calm. Suddenly, we heard a sound that made our blood run cold. A horrible, gut-wrenching howl that seemed to come from beyond the grave. It was the sound of the Sand Howler. And then we saw it. Standing atop the statue, silhouetted against the swirling sand, was a creature that defied all reason and logic. It looked exactly like the Sand Howler described by John Henry, a skeletal, jackal-like beast made of cracked clay and shifting sand. Its ribs and spine were clearly visible beneath its skinless body, and its empty eye sockets glowed with an eerie, cursed fire. And as it raised its head and let out another deafening howl, we knew we were in grave danger. That's when we started hearing voices in our heads. They whispered to us, promising us untold power, if we would only follow them into the storm. But we resisted the temptation, knowing that it was only a matter of time before the Sand Howler turned its attention to us. And boy, was that an understatement, because as soon as the sun rose, we found that our camp had been completely destroyed. Our food and water supplies were scattered to the winds, and our tents were in ruin. But that wasn't the worst of it. One of our team members, the historian, was missing. In his place, we found a single, disturbing clue. A small statue of the Sand Howler carved from a piece of shale. We knew then that the Sand Howler had claimed another victim, and we wasted no time in escaping the cursed city. As we fled, we could have sworn we heard the Sand Howler's unearthly laughter echoing behind us, mocking our fear and promising us that we would never escape its grasp. And you know what? I think it may be right. See, even though we escaped with our lives, I don't think any of us will ever be the same again. The experience changed us in ways we never could have imagined, and I'm not sure if it was for the better or worse. I believe the Sand Howler is a real creature, a manifestation of the ancient Nyxilians' fears and regrets. It is a reminder of the horrors that humanity has faced in the past, and a warning of the dangers that still lie hidden beneath the sands of the Middle East. If you want to learn more about cryptids, like the Sand Howler, make sure to stay tuned. Thanks for watching.